patch notes that dropped yesterday, September 9th, man, there's tons of stuff in there. And it feels like one of those old day patches where we would just have tons of stuff to talk about. Now, if I went through every single item in this list, we would be here all day. So I read through the patch notes and I pulled out 4 things that I think are really cool and that I am excited about. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to start with something that I have been waiting for Valve to fix for a really long time. In fact, I don't even know if Valve has ever publicly acknowledged that this was a problem. But today or yesterday, when I opened up the patch notes and I saw this, I was like, holy cow, finally. And then I got home from work today and I turned on my Steam Deck and I updated it to the latest software. And sure enough, they finally fixed one of my biggest gripes with navigating their library. If you did not have a Steam Deck before this came out, then you've never experienced this and you are very lucky. This was driving me crazy just recently because my grandson was over and we were playing some games and I wanted to make sure that he could only see the games that I thought were kids safe. So I went through and I had recently purchased every single Lego game that basically exists. There was a huge sale, or maybe I had it on Humble Bundle. I can't remember why I bought them, or when I bought them, but I bought them because I knew at some point my grandson was going to want to play Lego games with me, and I was really looking forward to that. So I was adding them to a custom a custom game list, essentially, of kid-safe games. So the games like Sonic Mania, all the Lego games, anything that was perfectly okay for him to see, I put into that list. So then when he comes over and he says, "Hey, Pops, can we play video games?" I can say yes. We come upstairs, I load up that list, and I can just see the games that I'm okay with him seeing. Well, when I was adding that list, what I would have to do is I would go through my list, I would open up a game, and I would hit add to this list, and every single time it would boot me back out and scroll me back up, and it was driving me crazy. Well, that's not what it's like anymore, and I'm going to put on screen right now what it's like now. It works exactly as you would expect it to. You go into the game, and then when you back out, it takes you exactly to where you were when you are scrolling the game, and it's just such a much better experience. I'm so happy that Valve fixed it. Moving on to their next thing that they fixed, they improved startup performance for users with large libraries that include non-Steam games. So recently, I put out a video. Well, maybe it's not recently. A few months back, I put out a video showing people how they could run some Game Pass games through the Steam Deck. And I'm not talking streaming, I'm talking running native on the Steam Deck. A couple people got mad at me for using the term native when I was describing this, but it is running on the Steam Deck. It's not running someplace else. The games are not in Steam. They are non-Steam games that you can add by adding like the Battle.net launcher to Steam, for example. And I've got a tutorial I'll link down below so that you guys can check that out if you want to know how to add like Battle.net games to your Steam Deck. So I went through and I did that. If you've done that for a lot of different games, like maybe you use Heroic Launcher or Battle.net Launcher or the Epic Games Launcher, there's tons of different launchers out there, and you add all of these games, well, what would happen is it would really slow down how quickly the Steam Deck would start up because it's trying to grab all of this stuff. And I think, I'm not a developer here, but I think it's just a little bit easier for Valve to get that information if it's in your Steam library. But the stuff that's a non-Steam game isn't really in your Steam library, so it's harder for those games to get added in. Another example where this is going to be really useful is if you are somebody who use RetroDeck or EmuDeck. Like on my TV back there, I'm running RetroDeck. And one of the things that you can do, I don't do it because it would be really slow, but one of the things that you can do with RetroDeck or EmuDeck is you can add each of your old retro games to the Steam launcher so that it just looks like a regular game. Now, I have enough retro games in my collection that I don't want to do that because that would just make it too hard for me to find the games that I want. So usually if I want to launch a retro game, I just go into RetroDeck and I launch the game that way through the RetroDeck launcher, which is Emulation Station, if I remember correctly off the top of my head. Well, let's say that instead, not like me, you decided to add all of those games to Steam. Well, having all of those games in Steam would make everything run slow. Well, now you don't have to worry about that because they've improved the startup performance for users with large libraries. Now, I don't know what the definition for large libraries is, but I'm curious, how many of you are adding non-Steam games to your Steam Deck or your ROG Ally or Ally X that's running SteamOS? How many of you have added that, and how many non-Steam games do you have in that list? I'm really curious to find out how long does it take for your Steam Deck to boot up, both before and after the patch. For me, I don't use a lot of non-Steam games on my Steam Deck, so I can't really test that. I would love to hear what you guys are doing. So let us know in the comments section down below that like button so we can all figure this stuff out together. Moving on, they also added a customization tab to game properties. The customization tab allows users to set a custom sort title that will be used instead of the actual title when sorting games in the library. So when you are sorting through games, sometimes games will have weird names for the sequel of the game. So instead of just, we'll just come up with a random name for a game. Well, I'm just going to look. We'll say Portal, right? There's Portal 1 and there's Portal 2. If Valve ever learns to count to 3, there would be Portal 3, but not all games do it that way. Let me give you an example, and I can't think of one off the top of my head for PC, but Zelda comes to mind. The original Zelda game is The Legend of Zelda. The sequel to that is The Adventure of Link, Zelda 2, essentially. Which means that if you were looking for this game and you would go down to Zelda, it wouldn't show up there. It would show up under Legend. And then when you went to look for the sequel, it wouldn't show up under Zelda. It would show up under Adventure. Well, with this new feature, you get to decide what the name of the game is. So I could, if I wanted to, go through all of the Zelda games that I have installed on my Steam Deck and have those games all renamed to be Zelda 1, Zelda 2, Zelda 3, Zelda 4, and so on. And then I would have all of the games in order in my library, which for somebody who has 1,000 games in their library, that's actually kind of important. And it would save you a bunch of time when you're trying to find the game that you want to play. This next one might actually confuse some people if they are looking at this on a Steam Deck, because Valve has added joystick LED controls under the settings and then customization. And you might be thinking, well, wait a second. My Steam Deck doesn't have LEDs on the thumbsticks. So what are they talking about? It's actually not for the Steam Deck. It's for the Lenovo Legion Go S, which is, by the way, a really great device. I've got a video about it linked down below so that you guys can check that out. But it has LEDs around the sticks. Now, I have not updated this to the latest firmware, to whichever one came out yesterday. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. So that's why these sticks are always off. But now I'm going to be able to turn them on if I want to. Personally, this doesn't really affect me all that much because I always just turn the LED sticks off so that I don't have these extra things distracting me. But if you're somebody who really likes to have LEDs on your devices, then now you can control them, and that is awesome. But that's going to do it. The entire patch notes are linked down below that like button. Go ahead and take a look at them, and I'm curious, which ones do you think are the most important ones that Valve patched recently? And what are some things that you think Valve still needs to fix? Let us know in the comment section down below. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe. From the Nerd Nest, I'm Bill. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Stay rad, everybody.